Hello again, this video is a short history about Tyningham House, a grand Scottish Baronial style house located close to the village of Tyningham in East Lothian. The house has been here since as early as 1094, with a mention in a charter by King Duncan II of Scotland to the monks of St Cuthbert from the monastery of Durham Cathedral. By 1250 the lands of Tyningham passed to the bishops of St Andrews, who for the next 200 years used it as a country retreat. Nice for them. That all changed during the Reformation in the mid-16th century when John Knox and his followers said "down with this sort of thing" and the UK changed forever. However, just before then, the house was actually leased by the Bishop of St Andrews and Andrew Foreman to a Robert Lauder of the Bass, as in Bass Rock, which is nearby. Robert used it as a winter residence and spent the summer at Bass Castle on the rock. Incredible to think there was a castle there with all the crazy birds on the rock too. It must have been hell to live there. But fast forward a generation and in 1535 the Bishop Foreman's successor, Bishop James Beaton, sold Tyningham to Robert's son, also Robert Lauder of the Bass, and this ended the ownership of the house by the bishops forever. Robert owned the house his entire life, and upon his death in 1576 it was inherited by his son, George. He too owned the house for his entire life, and upon his death in 1611, his wife Isabella Lauder grieved for 6 years before remodelling the house into an L-plan castle with walls up to 2.1 metres thick apparently. But only 4 years later in 1621 she was broke and had to sell the house. Up steps John, Lord Murray of Lochmaben, who buys the house, and this ends the Lauder family's ownership of the house forever. This now allowed John to self-style himself with the pompous name of Lord Murray of Tyningham, 1st Earl of Annandale, and he lorded around the place for the next 7 years before getting bored and selling it off to Thomas Hamilton, who was the 1st Earl of Haddington. Yeah, I've got actual images of the Earls of Haddington coming up from now on. By this point the place was looking pretty impressive, but it was about to get better, as around the 17th century it was extended to the east so that it formed 3 sides of a courtyard, and further buildings were added to the north and southeast. Charles Hamilton, son of Thomas Sr., did some of these renovations, but it was his son Thomas that really got stuck into it and did the majority of the work. He commissioned the famous architect William Byrne to modernise Tyningham House with things like a porch, bay windows and a longer west wing, and he wasn't finished yet as he also added the baronial turrets, loads more windows, and finally resurfacing the entire building in red sandstone, pretty much as you see it today, and it remained owned by the Hamilton family as their main residence through the years right up to the 12th Earl of Haddington, Sir George Bailey Hamilton. Many of the earls are buried in nearby St Baldrick's Church, which also has a very interesting history. However, when George died in 1986, the 13th Earl, John Bailey Hamilton, decided to sell the house for an undisclosed amount, as well as sell all the contents at auction. John was more interested in living in Mellerstane House in Berwickshire, and so this ended the run of ownership of Tyningham by the Hamiltons. A property developer called Kit Martin buys the house and over the next 2 years converts it into 9 individual apartments, which were then sold from 1989 onwards to private individuals. And that's the history of the house so far. An interesting building and a beautiful example of Scottish baronial architecture. I hope you liked this video. Remember to like and subscribe for more, and I'll see you on my next video somewhere else in the world. See ya!